What's up, data transformers? This is Bolaji, and welcome to Data Career Transformations, the show where we watch analytics engineers, data analysts, and data scientists transform their career. Today, we are talking to a data-driven engineering leader with a PhD, you heard me right, in quantum physics. Ooh, this is gonna be good. High performance computing and distributed systems, all of the above. He heads the engineering practice at Roche, and he leads over 150 tech professionals from 20 different countries. Expertise in cloud migrations, data infrastructure, DevOps, Python, R, data visualization. What do you want? He's got it in his bag. But here's what you don't know about this man. He didn't have a driver's license until age 30. Really? We gotta talk about that. How are you going on dates? He's traveled to over 50 countries, very well traveled, lived in the US for a time as well. He knows DBT Core version 0.12. Oh my goodness. I gotta hear the story on that. But perhaps most unusually of all, this man is a semi-professional dancer and dance teacher. Come on, baby. You know we got to get into that all the way from Zurich, Switzerland. Please help me welcome Head of Engineering of Global Product Strategy at Roche, Yannick Mistelli. What's up, Yannick?
Hey. Thanks a lot for having me. Very excited to be here.
Oh my word, this is a great pleasure. We've been working on getting Yannick for a minute. Yannick is in high demand across the world, not just for engineering stuff. So we're very happy to have him in the seat. Yannick, we love to explore people's transformations, and this is one of the more unusual ones. I've never spoken to a quantum physicist, so I'm about to nerd out here big time. But before we get to that, salsa. Wow. Tell me about that. Where did you first get interested in dancing?
It's a funny story because actually I didn't. So back in the days when I was still a teenager, my girlfriend at that time, she just enrolled us for a dance class.
My God.
She thought it's a nice surprise, and I hated it. But then, as it turns out, I started to really like it. I started to develop a really passion for dancing, and especially also Latin music and salsa music. So yeah, that's how I started out my career in dancing. I think it's also a very valuable lesson for life that sometimes you have to be forced into something in order to get exposed to it, and then you can start to develop a passion for it.
This is fascinating. So I'll share just for relatability. I also got into dancing when I was a teenager, grew up very, very shy, very socially awkward, and dancing ended up being something that helped me build my confidence, helped me build some of my people skills. So much so that my wife and I, before we got married, she was my girlfriend, we used to go take salsa dance lessons. So I'm super, nowhere near the level though. You guys got to search YouTube. We'll include a link to some of Yannick's. Woo, Yannick, you had the hair going. You had the buttons down. Like, oh, you were looking good, man. This was serious, like high level dancing.
Yeah, I mean, I really started to develop a strong passion for it, and I mean, I think the personality that I am is really like if I'm into something, then I give 100%. So, yes. And as you said, like for me, it was also extremely important to have this balance in my life. Because at the same time, I was going to the technical university in Zurich, and I had a lot of nerdy friends, right? And then I had my secret salsa life where I was also dancing and performing, and
oh my gosh,
it was a little bit difficult to celebrate my birthdays because those crowds would not really mix, you know.
Wow.
But it was interesting.
Hilarious. This is hilarious. Yeah. Okay, so I have to disclose, I talked about the quantum physics thing, and I want to get into that next. People who have been watching the show are very aware that I grew up a comic book nerd. So I was a dancing nerd, but I also was a comic book nerd as well. And one of the things that I'm learning is that I read a lot of Marvel comic books. Stan Lee and his writers actually borrowed a lot. They took inspiration from science. And I'm learning they took some inspiration from quantum physics. So I went to look up some quantum physics terms, and superposition is one of the ones that I'm reminded of when I think of Yannick, an object being in multiple places simultaneously until observed.
That's probably the most accurate analogy that somebody could come up with. It's very, very nice.
I mean, wow, quantum physicist. So this is really impressive. Did you know that you were going to get into technology and into data specifically when you were in university studying quantum physics?
I think I developed like a fascination for numbers very early on, and also for mathematics.
Mm,
And what I was fascinated by was more to have that I can explain things that are happening in the world through numbers.
I see.
So
I
I
see.
think that is something that I really found fascinating. And then
Mm,
I started studying mathematics, but then I switched into informatics because I was more fascinated about the applied side of mathematics, right? And informatics is really giving you that. I did my master's then more on the computational science side, where I got also
yes.
more exposed to physics. And then
Mm-hmm.
I somehow ended up in doing my PhD in quantum physics, doing simulations on molecules running on those big computers, where of course
Incredible.
you get exposed to high performance computing, distributed computing, to a lot of
Mm-hmm.
really like cutting edge topics on the informatics side as well, that I think
Mm.
will have been a great benefit for me, because cloud computing is nothing more than distributed computing, right? And of course, in my PhD, I learned many things that I still conceptually still have getting exposed to today.
You've actually likened high performance computing versus cloud to NASCAR driving versus streetcar driving. And for the fans of Fast and Furious, they're not the same thing. You can't. What's the relationship between cloud computing that many of us are familiar with and this incredible high performance computing world?
I mean, the high performance computing world is very fascinating, and I think it's a super relevant topic today, because all
Mm,
those LLMs are getting trained on those big machines, right? So the difference is really that in this high performance computing machines, they are really tuned for like every single hardware component is tuned,
yes.
versus
Yes.
in the cloud computing, you usually have like commodity hardware, right? So the difference is really that in performance computing, that's also why those machines are much more expensive, but they're
Hmm.
really built for that. And cloud computing is mostly just commodity hardware that you can rent, right?
Right, right. I mean, the quantum computing, it literally sounds like science fiction. You know, the fact that these bits can be on or off, or both on and off at the same time. And this allows these computers, from my limited understanding, to do so many more calculations and computations simultaneously than regular hardware is incredible.
I mean, okay, so I did classical computing, right? But
Yes.
we did simulations of quantum physics on those classical machines. Now, what you just touched was a new frontier, which is quantum computing itself,
Hmm.
which of
Hmm.
course I think will enable even more accurate simulations in the future. But I personally think there's still a long way to go to
Okay.
make those quantum computers really stable enough and useful enough. But I mean,
Mm.
it's extremely promising and exciting as well. But I was
Right.
never directly working on the quantum computers itself.
I see. I see. I see. You know, so it's interesting, Yannick. I don't know if you have the opportunity to read fiction any. I do enjoy from time to time reading science fiction or listening on Audible right now because I'm always driving my kids to soccer practice or something. But I listened to a book by Andy Weir. He's the author of The Martian. This is a movie that came out a couple of years ago. He wrote this other book, though, called Randomized, short book, and it talked about how a husband and wife couple cheated a casino out of millions of dollars by using a quantum physics computer and the concept of quantum entanglement. So basically, the casino was using this quantum computer to generate random numbers for their games. And they basically were able to entangle the computer that they had at home, this husband wife couple, with the computer in the casino. Okay, it's science fiction, but it bears some basis in reality. Is this quantum entanglement thing actually possible?
I think, as I said before, I think there's many applications that potentially could benefit from quantum computers. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I work in pharma, right? I think also my company Roche is also heavily looking into how we could potentially use quantum computers for drug development, for prediction of molecules, right? So it is still science fiction, but how far we are off from that, I think
Yes.
time will tell.
Oh my gosh. We live in exciting times. That is for sure. We live in exciting
Yes.
times. Okay, so Yannick, I'd love it if we could walk through 5 of your most recent job titles and help people understand how you made some of those pivots. So you came out of a very academic background, but I believe that your first data job was at Julius Baer as a data science lead.
Yes, so I started my career in finance because in Switzerland, you either go and work for a pharma company or for a bank or for a chocolate company, right? So there's not that much industries. So I ended up to work for a private bank in
Yes.
Zurich, which for me was quite a nice entry because it was big enough to be at the global scale, but small
Mm-hmm.
enough to really also get exposed to different areas of finance and banking. So for
Yes.
me, it was a very good starting point after my academic career.
Mm.
But of course, there were a lot of learnings as well. I think academia is not really preparing you that well for working in the
Mm.
private sector.
Mm.
So I had to learn to speak the business language, which is very different from the academic language. But
Mm.
we had a lot of interesting problems to solve. Of course, on a different level than what I was doing before in quantum physics. But still,
Right.
I think it was a good entry point for me to understand what has an impact on the daily life of this private bank.
Wow.
The area that I was in was indeed also giving me a lot of opportunities to get exposed to different data use cases. So it was a
Okay.
very interesting time.
And this is interesting as well because I heard in one conversation you had, Yannick, that they started you off doing Excel spreadsheets. Despite having
Yes.
this big fancy title, data science lead and the PhD, you're doing Excel.
Yeah, it was a big shift to be honest, right? But I think it's also important to be humble enough to really understand what is creating an impact and what not, right? So
Mm.
I mean, what is the point for me doing like some fancy risk calculations if the bigger impact is to populate the Excel spreadsheet in the correct way, So I think it was a tough learning curve because of course when you come from academia you want to be and want to do all these fancy things, but then you end up doing something completely different. But if this is having like business impact, I mean, for me that was always the thing that I was looking for, because that was also the reason why I left academia in the first place, right? I was looking
Mm.
to have more real world impact, and
Mm-hmm.
then of course it started off with the very simple things as spreadsheeting.
Wow. That's actually really, really fascinating that someone with all of your education, all of your pedigree was doing Excel spreadsheets, and yet you were able to focus on still providing business value to the point where the business now started to trust you more and give you more responsibility. Very much a big lesson for all of us. Yannick, you had the opportunity to work in consulting as well. And I've spoken to a few people who've worked in consulting. It seems like there are benefits in being able to see different tech stacks, different problems and use cases. What did you pull from your years as a consultant?
As you said, I think you get exposed to different industries. For me,
Mm.
also interesting to you get exposed to different maturity levels in data and analytics across the board, and that helped also to assess better than what is mature, what is not mature. And so I think I've seen a lot in this time that also helped me to gain better understanding across different industries, across different maturities, across different tech stacks as well, across different cultures. I think there's a lot of learning, and I really enjoyed my time as a consultant.
Yes.
Although for me also, it became clear that my personality is a little bit different. So for me, it was also clear that I want to own a solution rather than just to go in and consult. So that's why eventually I also left, because I wanted to really build something more
Yes.
sustainable, something more long
Yes.
term. And that's why for me, those years that I was consultant were really amazing. And they helped me probably also to become a better leader and a better owner in the long term.
Yes, yes, yes. Man, I love that, Yannick, and it seems that I'll be interested as to what your personality was as a teenager, as a young person, because within your career, it seems like you've been fairly adventurous in experimenting with different parts of the profession. In fact, we like to ask people how their personality matches up to a particular data lane, whether it is data scientist, analyst, engineer, or even analytics engineer. So, how would you describe your personality growing up, and which of those data hats do you ultimately feel fits you best right now?
It's a good question. So I think my personality from young age was I was very curious all the time. I think my my parents were really annoyed with me asking all the time, why? But why? But can you explain why? So I think from very young age I was very curious, and luckily I could keep that, I would say. I think the other thing, as we already mentioned, I think for me pursuing my passion was also part of my personality. So in this data roles, for me the interesting aspect is that I think I went through all of them, and now I can still play a key part in them, in the sense of,
Hmm.
okay, I had my PhD career where I was doing heavy things in data science, machine learning. But
Yes.
then, of course, when I started in industry, I realized, hey, your role should rather be data analyst and
Hmm.
data business analyst to support
Hmm.
support some folks doing some dashboards. So I would even say like visual analytics was also part of my journey, and then of course also analytics engineer of building the correct data models to support the business. So I think I went through the entire journey, and I had also the luck that I could go through the entire journey to
Hmm.
really understand what is needed. And I
Hmm.
mean, this is also how I structured my teams here at Roche, following those, I call them, capabilities. So for me those are very important aspects, and now I have amazing teams with amazing capability lead that are focused on
Yes.
data analytics, on visual analytics, on analytics engineering. So I think
Yes.
I was really blessed that I could go through those roles myself to gain the deep understanding that
Wow.
I can use
Wow.
today.
Wow. Yes. Yes. That's incredible. That can make you a more empathetic leader. You can understand what they're going through because you've done it yourself. That's extremely powerful. I've heard you talk about this philosophy you have, Yannick, in building your data organization, where you emphasize people, process, and technology. And if I understood correctly, you tend to emphasize the people part first. Could you unpack this tripod, this three-legged stool of people, process, and technology? Where did that come from?
I think it was for me really also through my journey. I realized I started as technology enthusiast,
Yes, yes,
and I love technology. I still do, but I
yes.
think there's many problems that you cannot solve with technology. So I think many problems that I still see today where we need to improve a process. And yes, the
Hmm.
technology can help to improve the process, but you should start with the process first and not with the technology.
Mm. Wow.
Now, at the end of the day, you also need to factor in the people, because people are probably the most important aspect. So you
Mm.
cannot define the right process with the right people, or vice versa.
Mm.
So that's why
Mm.
for me, people, process, and technology are strongly interlinked, and you should always
Yes.
look at those things holistically.
Wow. Wow. You went as far as interviewing the first 40 or so engineers in your organization yourself? That's a lot of work, Yannick.
It is, but also there, like I think if you want to put a strong emphasis on people, I think you
Yes.
need to put in also the efforts to pick the right people. And I mean,
Mm,
what I have achieved in the last 5 years here was definitely having the right people on board with the right mindset, with the right skills, with the right motivation. And it is a tremendous work to find the right people, but I think
mm,
long term, it definitely pays off. So that's why for me, the people part is crucial. If you want to be
mhm.
successful, you have to find the right people with the right skill set to go the marathon with you.
Incredible. Incredible. I really appreciate that you're able to share all of these learnings, hard-earned learnings, I don't doubt that you've had along the way. Now, you found your way from Teradata, the big data consulting company organization, to Roche, which is, my goodness, 250 billion dollar company, maybe founded in 1896. Very well established brand. I grew up in Nigeria. I knew the brand very well, so known world around. But you didn't start out as head of engineering. You worked your way through the organization. And I think a lot of people don't have the visibility into how do I go from my entry level role to actually climbing through to the middle layers and then even getting as far as head of engineering. What would you say allowed you, Yannick, to progress from being a lead data scientist at Roche all the way to head of engineering?
I think
Mm-hmm.
is very very key also to my journey. I started
Mm,
at Roche as a machine learning engineer or data scientist, but then I quickly realized all the cool things that I wanted to do. We actually cannot do because we don't have the right platform, we don't have the right
ha.
data, etc. So for me, then I needed to pivot into the direction of let's build out the right data platform, the right infrastructure in the cloud in order to do all the cool things that I wanted to
Wow.
do in the first place. And
Yes.
luckily, I got, small budgets where we started on, building things out in the cloud. We onboarded first use cases and we started to deliver. And
Mm-hmm.
I think here also, if you start to produce good outputs, of course, people will start to trust you more. You will get more budget. You will get also more work.
Mm.
But this then happened stepwise that we really could grow the team from, I think it was like 5, 6 engineers 5 years ago to that big organization that we have today.
My goodness. My goodness. That's incredible. And that's really encouraging to hear as well. I understand that early on DBT was discovered DBT became part of your technical stack. Roche has been running both core and cloud in a hybrid nature. What problems did DBT core solve for you all? And then when did you also then adopt cloud?
Yeah, so we were very early adopters of DBT Core
Mm-hmm.
back in 2018, 19. It
Mm.
was really the last missing piece for us because we wanted to do everything as code and, of course, also the transformations and the data pipelines as code.
Yes.
So for me, when I came across DBT, it was the last puzzle piece that was missing that we finally found. And then we needed to start to scale at some point very quickly to not only support the global Roche functions, but also the countries. So Roche has over 80 affiliates. And
Yes.
of course, to scale that quickly, we were only able to do that with DBT Cloud because DBT
Mm,
Cloud there was also in the time when DBT Labs launched DBT Cloud, and for us it
mm-hmm.
was perfect timing because it helped us to scale to the affiliates rather quickly. So
Yes.
for us, it became a crucial aspect also for our scaling. Today, we are still in a hybrid model where we still have
Yes.
some workloads and core, but many more now on the cloud.
Man, this is exciting. This is exciting. So, with all of these really great accomplishments that you've had, both in building your organization as well as exciting data projects that you've initiated and completed, we'd love to maybe hear the other side of the coin, Yannick. Maybe some of the disaster, some of the projects that didn't go so well, to the extent you're able to share publicly. What would be a data disaster that you could share with us?
I wouldn't say disaster, but of course,
Mm,
it is important, and that's also was a learning for a lot of the analytics engineers to
yes.
leverage more DBT tests, you know. So I think one of the great features of DBT is the data tests. And I cannot emphasize enough how important they are, especially if you run daily sales reports for your organization. People, of course, they want to have the accurate data as fast as possible. And that's why, for me, in order to build trust to the solutions that we have, it's crucial to run data tests on a daily basis so that you can proactively inform your stakeholders if there's any issues on the data side of things or on the
Mm-hmm.
pipeline side of things. So I think that's, for me, probably an important message is, you know, think about the data testing very early on, talk to
Yes.
the business stakeholders about what tests should we run on a daily basis so that we can
Mm-hmm.
inform them proactively, because nobody wants to look at a report that has wrong numbers, right? And I
Yeah.
think the second or third time, if you look at the report and it's showing strange numbers, you're not going to look at it anymore. So that's
Mm.
why I think to build up this trust relationship with your stakeholders through solid data pipelines, through solid data testing, I think
Mm-hmm.
that was a very important learning for us.
Man, that's great. That's really helpful to hear. And I'm interested along those veins, how you think about this question of business value, measuring business value. It's something that a lot of data professionals have struggled with. And in fact, I've heard you talk, Yannick, about sometimes potentially taking shortcuts as technical debt in order to demonstrate business value, even while ultimately you want to have the long term and more strategic rollouts. So, how do you think about communicating business value as a data leader?
And I think this is the tricky part to also
Mm,
sell what you're doing and sell
yeah.
the business value.
Yes.
And for me, also there, I think the best that you can do is if you achieve that the business stakeholders advocate for you, I think
Mm.
then you came a long way, right? So if you
Hmm.
have actually the business folks going back and saying, wow, yeah, this is really, really helpful. This
Wow.
solution really provides us extreme value. Then you don't even need to go and make that big case for it because other people are making the case for you, right?
Wow.
Of course, this is like the ideal scenario. So I
Yeah.
think it's still very important that you build up this skill set also of, you know, selling your solution, selling also and making visible what is the impact of what your data teams and your data solutions are
Yes.
having in the organization.
Yes.
But to be honest, I mean, I'm struggling also sometimes because a lot of things that we are doing are not getting the visibility, right? I mean, how do you
Mm.
measure data literacy? How do you measure changing the culture? How do you measure all of these
Mm.
things? It's
Mm-hmm.
extremely hard. So I think there's for sure like hard facts and ROIs and KPIs that you can calculate. But then there's also many things where it's extremely difficult to measure. But at the
Yes.
same time, it's important to highlight that this is also part of the work that you're doing on a daily basis that is not
Yes.
getting so much awareness and recognition, unfortunately.
Right, right, right. Yeah, that is a challenge. That is a challenge. With that in mind, Yannick, sometimes I have the benefit of asking some of our guests how they handle these occasional high pressure or stressful situations where there isn't always a direct or easy or immediate answer. Not only do you run a very large organization, but you're mentoring and leading a lot of other data professionals. How do you personally find ways to get rid of the stress, to manage the stress over a long term?
It's a good question, and I think I'm probably not the best example. I'm trying to have a good social life. I'm trying also to have my routines, my sports, my friends, my family,
Mm,
my time off, although I struggle really to take off
yeah,
and switch
yeah,
off from work. But I think it's
yeah.
important. I mean, I'm also telling folks that when they're going on holidays to please not work, right? I think it is
Mm,
important to find a good balance to recharge. As much as work is motivating me and giving me a lot back, I think it's important to also find other sources where you can use to refill your energy.
Yes.
So yeah.
Yes, yes. I appreciate your honesty here. I think it's not easy for any of us, and probably much more so challenging for someone who's running such a large organization as well. So thank you for sharing what's working and what you're still trying to work on. I don't know if you ever have time to watch TV. If you do, at any point, I want to recommend a show on Apple TV called Dark Matter. It's also a book written by a guy named Blake Crouch, but it deals with the many worlds theory and quantum superposition. It's very, very interesting. Anyway, maybe something for a future time off.
That sounds good. Yes, I'll check it out.
Yeah, excellent, excellent. Okay, folks, we want to allow Yannick to get back to the very important business that he's doing, so we'll just ask a couple more questions. You've been so generous with your time, Yannick. I appreciate it. I want to ask two questions here. One is about mentors, whether you've had any mentors or influences along your journey. If so, we'd love to hear about them. And then the final question is advice you would give to someone who wants to follow in your footsteps. So there's a young 16-year-old salsa dancer somewhere about to get into a quantum physics program in university, and he wants to be head of engineering one day. Okay, but first, let's talk about the mentor question. Who has inspired you or influenced you in your journey?
I like to read a lot. So I think for
Hmm.
me, the influences or the people that I would drain from, I think are mostly from books.
Okay.
I think one story that's really impressed me and the book that also inspired me a lot was No Rules Rule from Reed Hastings, the story of Netflix and the culture of reinvention. So I think there's many interesting stories and many interesting learnings from there. Of course, I had also some good leaders that I look up to. So I think it's really like trying to collect the best things from everywhere that
Mm.
works for you.
Mm-hmm.
I think for
Mm-hmm.
me that's where it's difficult to say that okay, I have this figure or that figure. I think there's
Yes.
many pieces that are coming together.
Yes. No, I love that. I love that. Pulling from different sources, different inspirations,
Yes.
even possibly different disciplines, as you've displayed very well with all of your various passions. And so for someone who is in their data career now, maybe they're even in an organization like your data organization, and they'd like to make their way through the levels. You've talked about things like following things you're passionate about. You've talked about being endlessly curious. What are some final words of inspiration or hope that you could share with some of these data professionals?
Yeah, I would say I think it's important to build a solid foundation, right? I mean, and
Mm.
by solid foundation, I mean putting in the effort, cultivating resilience and discipline.
Wow.
I think it's just the basics that for me are important. Secondly, I would also say that focus on output and impact,
Wow.
because if it's for me it was truly important to show the impact and the output, because this is
Right.
what most people should be interested in. I also would say put in the effort to cultivate trusting relationship, to connect to people deeply. And I think only through that you can also achieve that impact that I was just mentioning, right? Because you need to earn the trust of the people in order to drive meaningful change. And there's a lot of
Wow.
topics about change management, and that's why it is important to build up this trust relationship in order to be able to change anything. I mean, otherwise, why would people allow a change, right? So
Wow.
that's why, yeah, I think change management and improving processes, again, closing with people, process, and technology. So building a solid foundation for technology, connecting to the people deeply, and drive change through process improvements. I think for me, those would be the three takeaways.
Oh my goodness. You're not giving us easy tasks, man. I mean, this all of this advice resonates. It sounds so right. And yet it's not necessarily easy, especially for those of us who have been technical throughout our
Yes.
career. Connecting, driving meaningful change by cultivating deep, trusting relationships. Sometimes I just want to dive in and work on the code and start solving the problem. But I can see how there's a lot of value in first earning that trust. What do they say? If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Together.
This is hard.
But it's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's hard and beautiful. So.
You're right. You're right. Yannick, this is exciting. Do you still have the opportunity to do any dancing? When's the last time you went salsa dancing?
I still regularly teach on Tuesday nights. So if you happen to
My
be in
gosh.
Switzerland, say hello and join the class.
Bravo. Bravo. We need more video on YouTube, man. The last video I saw is from 14 years ago. Come on, Yannick. Oh, this is exciting, folks. We've been talking to the Yannick Mistelli, Head of Engineering at Global Product Strategy in Roche. He's in Zurich, Switzerland, and he's still teaching salsa classes on Tuesdays. This has been a distinct pleasure, Yannick. Thank you for your generosity. Fantastic. All right, folks, I hope you enjoyed this one. Look him up on YouTube. He talks about data. He does dancing. It's great. We'll see you guys on the next one. Bye for now. This show is brought to you by DBT. DBT is the industry standard for data transformation. It allows your team to prepare data for analysis in a way that's centralized, modular, and entirely open, all inside your cloud data platform. The outcome? Consistently dependable analytics for your organization. Now, the DBT community was built for and by data pros. Come hang out and transform with 70,000 of the brightest analytics engineers, data analysts, and data scientists in the world. With DBT, you transform your data. With the DBT community, you transform your data career.